in general. For those of you that know me, know how passionate I am about this and how important it is to me to see this move forward. It's something I really never would have expected, looking back a couple of years, to really be where I am right now, and kind of chasing the dreams I am currently, but I'm super happy to be in this position. So yeah, I will start off with my presentation. If you have any questions as we go or any comments on anything that I am talking about, please feel free to send a message in the messagey thing. If there's anything at all. So start here. So basically today we're going to talk about the development of female football. I'll kind of talk about, okay, there we go. So just kind of the words that I use. So I will refer to all female football as female football. When I'm talking about youth football, I'll refer to it as girls football. And when I'm talking about adult female football, I will refer to it as women's football. Basically 18 plus, 18 under. So what we're going to cover today, it's going to be kind of a very broad discussion. I think there's a lot of things, I mean, unless someone's been directly involved in female football in depth, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be new information, different information. And I just kind of wanted to really touch on a little bit of everything. So I'll start with a little bit of more in-depth introduction and a bit more of a background of me. It just really explains why I'm doing. So I think that's important. Then we'll get into why female football, current opportunities for both girls and women, barriers that are presented, milestones, and the notable females. And then we'll get into a little bit more of the technical stuff. So growing the game, language and communication, social media, YEG FFC, which is the YEG Female Football Collective. We'll talk about some goals that I personally have, and then keys to success and some major takeaways. So, as Taylor introduced me, Tanya Walter, CDMFA Technical Director. So with them, I'm really focusing on building the female programs as well as flag football. So essentially your non-traditional types of football, as well as a big focus on social media as well. I am also the founder of YEG FFC, so the YEG Female Football Collective. It's something that I created to help grow and support females playing, working, and volunteering in football. So kind of creating something of a hub for if there's a female that's interested in football, somewhere that they can go and find out any relevant information to it. That was one big thing that I saw was lacking, was informative information, as well as really knowing what your opportunities are. And on top of that, kind of coverage and media coverage and recognition. I also coach football. So I coach the FX Rams, the offensive line. The past 2 years, I've coached the Team Alberta girls flag football, as well as the West Edmonton Raiders last year in our inaugural girls season. I am a WWCFL player, the Western Women's Canadian Football League. It'll be my 8th season. Well, it would have been my 8th season this year. And then I'm also a Team Canada athlete. So I played in the 2017 games in Canada. I was an offensive guard, and we won a silver medal against the US. Some of the big events that kind of took me on the path that I'm on are the ones that you can see on the screen right here. So I kind of, over the last couple of years, went from just being a player and wanting to be a better player and just kind of growing through that. And I've kind of taken on a lot of responsibility for moving the game forward. A lot of that comes from playing in a league that is in a good place, but I think can be in an even better place. So just kind of that constant need for improvement. And also a lot of the stuff that I've had to deal with as a female player, I don't want younger girls to have to go through. And we will touch a little bit on some of that stuff later. So one of the big things was I attended in 2018, I was selected to attend the NFL Women's Careers in Football Forum. So the NFL started hosting these in 2017, and they've hosted them consistently since then. Basically, it's a forum where women are invited that are involved in football to be able to kind of create some goals, decide what they want to do. A big thing from that is they were pulling a lot of people, especially in the States, to come and work positions within the NFL. So whether it was coaching or if it was a little bit more back office stuff. So I met a lot of really amazing people, and that was really where I remember thinking like, okay, it would be really cool to go help coach in the NFL. But all I could continue to think about is how much I was like, cool, NFL football is really big, but I want football to be better back home. And I want more people to have opportunities like I have, and even better than what I've been offered. Another big event that I participated in is the Football USA World Women's Football Games. I attended the first 2 years of this event. Football USA put this on to try and help close the gap and really educate and train women that are playing football. So the first year I went, I believe there was about 26 different countries worth of girls there. So that kind of is a testament to how many places they are playing football. It was really cool. They had a lot of NFL players out over the years, and just really a lot of the people that I now have connections with kind of started from there. The other two big things is Canadian Women's National Championships. In 2016 in Regina, we won a bronze medal with Team Alberta. And then, like I mentioned before, the 2017 IFAF Women's World Championships, played for Team Canada. It was really neat. We got to play on home soil. And we were actually the first team to score against the US team. The past two championships, they had not been scored on whatsoever. So we will move forward into talking about why female football. So because it's not something that's super present, I think it's really important to talk about why it's important to help bring in football, female football. I mean, to me, it's kind of more of a why not? There's no question about it. I think it should absolutely be something that is offered to our youth and to our women. But for anyone who's maybe coming from somewhere where they haven't had a lot of exposure to it or anything like that, this is really important to talk about so people can really start to see, you know, why we're driving so hard to make this happen. So there's demand there. I always kind of say for every girl that's playing high school, which there's a significant amount now, or any of the minor leagues, there's probably at least 2 or 3 girls whose parents just say no because they don't want them to play with the boys. And then there's another several girls who just aren't aware that it's an option or have ever really thought of it. People generally like to take the path of least resistance. So if there's hoops to jump in, it takes a special breed of person to really want to go forward with that. Safety concerns is a really big one. I'm all for women being strong and tough, and we can do some amazing things, but the reality is there is a substantial size difference. It's not always across the board, but as an average, the boys are a lot bigger than the girls. So that's one big thing. Also concerns from parents, whether that be about size, whether that just be about they don't want their girls on a team with a bunch of boys. And then you also run into kind of male-female issues, just having them on the same team. I mean, no other sport do you generally have that. And generally it's fine and it's pretty good, but there's always something that comes up on some end. So if we can just avoid that altogether, it'll just help make everyone's experience more positive. More opportunities. It's great that in the last couple of years, the community has been a lot more welcoming to girls playing on boys teams and essentially making them mixed teams. But in a perfect world, that should never have to happen. There's very little room for leadership opportunities for females on these teams, let alone, and also there's very little opportunity for even playing time. Some are standouts and are fine and they get some playing time, but you know, it goes both ways. Sometimes it's that the coaches don't want them to play, even though they probably could hold up fine. And it just becomes a little bit of a messy thing. So again, if we have the opportunity for boys and girls, it's just even better to split it off. One of the really big things kind of coming from the female side of things is that football is truly the most inclusive sport that's out there. Any body type can play. it's huge for the gender, like for a gender that struggles so much with self-worth and confidence to start with. It's really, like, you talk to any of the girls that play and it's all empowerment. Like, they feel so much better about themselves and what they're doing and their goals, and they're just so much more driven, having the opportunity to really play football. Coming from a body type thing, I mean, you look at other sports that are very popular in the women's world, and you have volleyball, you have basketball, soccer, and we'd be ignorant to say that there's not just there's one body type. Like, there really is just kind of one body type for those sports. If you're not tall enough, if you're not fast enough, there's just not a lot of growth there. So football really gives the opportunity for all different body types to really have a place where they can play and succeed. So a big thing I'm going to go over here in the beginning is what opportunities currently exist for females to play tackle football. I think it's really important that if you have any interest in helping grow girls football and participating in that it's really important to understand where we're kind of coming from, where we're at in the sense of opportunities. So I'm going to go over opportunities for both girls and women. For knowing you have to know the continuity of a sport to really be able to promote it and to tell people that they should play. There needs to be that to really pique interest a lot of the time. So current opportunities for girls, I'm going to stick mostly in Canada. There's going to be one league I'm going to talk about in the States. Girls football isn't really something I've looked into too deeply in the rest of the US or overseas. I haven't heard a lot about it. There's very likely some leagues out there. I know Texas, I think, just recently started one, but none that are really on the radar. So first one, where I work, Capital District Minor Football. So we're located in Alberta. We primarily northern Alberta, so Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, St. Albert, Fort McKay. If you're not involved with us, a little bit more information on that. We play 6-a-side. We have a Tier 1 and Tier 2 championship. Teams and divisions, this year, 2020, we would have had 9 teams in 2 age divisions. So we would have had 5 in U16 and 5 in U16 and 4 in U19. And then eligibility, 13 to 18 years old. So the women's team in our city, their cutoff, we tried to make them line up so that we never would have any competition with girls being able to have the opportunity to play both. We made a really hard cutoff so that it was you play this and then you can play that. So we didn't have any competition because it's really important for those teams to be able to work together. Then the league that's been around the longest, the Manitoba Girls Football League, they're located in Winnipeg. They run a 6-a-side game. They have league championships. They have 5 teams, 2 different age groups. They run junior and senior. They run 14 to 17 years old, and they must be enrolled in high school. So Manitoba would have actually been going into their 10th year this year. They're incredibly developed. They usually see between 160 to 180 girls register per year, which, considering they're really just pulling from Winnipeg, is fairly substantial. Then we have on the East Coast, the Varsity Girls Football League. In New Brunswick, they have Fredericton, St. John, Simmons, Hampton, and Moncton. Again, 6-a-side, they run provincial championships. 5 teams, 1 division, 14 to 17 years old, again, must be enrolled in high school. So you can kind of see a theme with the ages that are serviced. Generally, those younger ages, it's not a big issue if they're playing kind of mixed in with the boys. When they kind of hit that junior high age, that's where things that's where participation usually starts to drop off, as well as the size difference starts to become pretty substantial. Another Canadian league that is relatively new, I think they actually just started going by this name, the Prairie Girls Football League. So it's a Saskatchewan league. They started off with Regina, Yorkton, Melville, and Moosomin. This next year, they should be adding Saskatchewan and Estevan, so they'll actually have 6 teams. They actually run 9-a-side, and they add a 5th quarter for their younger players. So they run an eligibility of 12 to 17. So I think it's their grade 7 and 8s, and any of their newer grade 9s actually get their own quarter to play with, but they don't get to play the main part of the game. 6 teams, 1 age division. This will be their 2nd year, I believe, that they're running their teams. And then the really big one, this one's in the States, obviously Utah Girls Tackle Football. It runs in the Salt Lake and Utah counties. The teams kind of form where the greatest demand lies, so there isn't necessarily any specifics. Gameplay is dependent on age. I believe they start with more 6-a-side, 9-a-side, and I believe they do work up to 11-a-side for their oldest age group. They have 3 different age divisions, and they service grades 4 to grade 12. So they have a really big span. They're very, very prominent. They sit with registration about 600 and some girls right now. So this is really big. They've also had a lot of recognition and promotion through the NFL, which has been fantastic. If any of you have heard of Sam Gordon, she was in some NFL commercials a couple of years ago. She was one of the driving forces at 9 years old behind this league. Her dad's very heavily involved with it, and they've done an amazing job. I would really say that they're very much a model league when it comes to growth. I know one of their end games is to try and get their teams to actually be able to be operated with the high school. They run a little bit with that right now, but they would like to get that a little bit more in line. As for girls' leagues, that's basically all of the big ones through Canada and then the one American one. Another thing we're going to touch on, just girls in high school football. So some of you who coach in high school might have noticed that there's been a pretty significant participation increase over the last couple of years. I can say definitely last year, there was a lot more girls after having our girls season. And there's even girls that just play high school that didn't play in our girls league. Support and encouragement is really needed from the coaches. It's a really big thing to support them and not shoot them down. I know a lot of coaches' concerns are that sometimes it becomes a little bit of a attention seeking thing, but I think that's not very common anymore. I know it definitely had been in the past, but generally when these girls want to play, they're there to play. It's a big development opportunity for them, which is why I think it's very important for them to be involved when it comes to just getting more experience playing and seeing how, again, 12-man football, especially if they're not exposed to it right away, because we play 6-man, it's a really good thing for them to see, as well as I think it's very important for them to be teammates with some of the boys and for the boys to see that girls can be interested and focused and want to play football. The value is really in the practice and the experience for them. Like I said, most of them are more than aware that they're probably not going to get to play a lot. Some of them do. It's, again, very dependent on the program and the position that they're in. Like I said, important for the growth of the sport. And I think it's something that is really needed until there's comparable programming for females. I mean, even with our girls program, because it's such a short season right now, if the girls are only playing football for, 6 weeks of games, I just don't think that's enough for them to really start to develop. So I've kind of thrown in all these pictures I took from last year. So this is a Grand Prairie team that FX played a exhibition game against, the one girl on our team. Then we have, I think this is Sachus. So a couple of these girls, if not all of them, actually play in the girls' league as well. We got some JP girls. I believe these are from the juniors, some Facey girls. I know there's also a girl that actually plays on the senior JP team as well. And then we have, again, FX, Lillian Osborne, Emma Lesberg. She plays in our girls' league. She is a fantastic quarterback. It was really cool. She actually got to take a couple snaps, and I was thinking she's probably the first and only girl that's ever actually taken snaps in a high school game, which was a huge, huge thing for her. Some Paul King girls. And we got a bunch more junior girls with Bella Rose, Facey. On the right, we have 2 girls that actually were younger but were grandfathered into playing for the Storm, who also play for Ainley. And then we have one of our Storm players who's actually coaching out in Facey. So next we're gonna get into current opportunities for women. I'm not gonna go super in depth. It's important for everyone wanting to be involved in girls football to know what those opportunities are, because sometimes the difference between a girl playing football and not playing football will be whether or not she gets to play it after high school and have more opportunity down the road. So the big one, especially coming from Edmonton, is the Western Women's Canadian Football League. So again, they would have actually been going into their 10th year of operations this year. There's 8 teams. There's 4 in Alberta. We got Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Grand Prairie. In Saskatchewan, there's Saskatoon and Regina, and then Manitoba has 2 teams. Really interesting is they actually have the largest rosters in the league, a big testament to their girls program and what that can do for the women's program as well. Gameplay, we play 12-a-side. Teams and divisions, we have 8 teams, 2 conferences, and our eligibility for most teams is 18 years or older. Some teams, especially ones that don't have girls programs, do allow 16 plus. Another one we have in Canada, so there's actually only 2 in Canada. We have the Maritimes Women's Football League. It's located on the East Coast. They have a Fredericton team, Halifax, St. John, Moncton, and Prince Edward Island will just be joining this year. They play some different rules. They actually play 11-a-side, but they play on a Canadian field with mostly Canadian rules, but they have 4 downs. So they've adapted their game a little bit just to make whatever works for them. I know they originally were playing 9 and 10-a-side, but as their numbers have grown, they've bumped that up. 5 teams over there, 1 division, and eligibility, because they have that girls program, is 18 and older. And then when we start to look internationally, it's really important to see kind of how spread this is across the world. So the United States are definitely the most developed when it comes to the women's football teams. The Women's Football Alliance is one of the bigger ones. It's been around for a very, very long time. They have, I believe, 49 different teams playing in 3 different divisions. So lots of opportunity in the States for that. There's also the WNFC, which just recently started this past year. And then there's a couple more that are either kind of starting up or starting to kind of peter off as some of the bigger ones start to take over a little bit of everything and just become overall more developed. In Europe, women's football is incredibly popular over there. Some countries it's actually more popular than male football, which is really interesting. Germany has like 30 different teams, which I found fascinating. And then a bunch of Guam has a very surprisingly developed women's football league. Honduras, Costa Rica, Australia has a couple leagues over there. Mexico is actually really taking off with their women's football. And then Brazil, which I just found out today, also has a women's football league. So lots of opportunity, even with girls that are, living up here, maybe they're going to school in the States or overseas. Their football journey doesn't have to end once they're done high school. And then just a couple of the bigger events. So these kind of go internationally as well. So we have the International Federation Association of Football, or IFAF, whichever that is, World Championships. So they've actually had 3 past championships, with the 4th one coming up hopefully still next year. As you can see, United States has taken the gold every time. Canada has also taken the silver every time. But there's been a little bit more of a switch up this past year with the bronze. Current or past countries that have really dominated have actually kind of been overtaken. Mexico was a really big surprise. I know going into 2017, they actually did phenomenal. They played very well against the United States. They're going to be someone to look out for. And then in Canada, which Taylor would have been hosting this year, at the end of July, beginning of August, the Canadian National Tournament started in 2012. Biggest thing for this was serving as a selection opportunity for Team Canada. Really neat, though, to be able to kind of get the provinces together and play against the other players and provinces that you don't normally get to play against. I believe we were going to have 6 teams this year. So it stayed pretty consistent, and it's growing a lot. Alberta won the bronze medal in 2016, and that really started to bump things forward. And that year we also saw more ladies from Alberta make Team Canada than ever had in the past. Is there any questions before I kind of get into the barriers, is there any questions on the leagues, the opportunities, anything like that? If there is, type them in there. I'm going to assume we're good. Perfect.
Nothing yet, Tanya. Thank you. You're doing a great job. If anybody just wants to pop their video on and ask a question on that topic she was just discussing, feel free. If not, grab a drink of water and you can continue on there. I did have one question I had. I know we were trying to track it, but did you know how many high school girls were playing this year?
No,
Or an estimation?
I would say probably, I did kind of figure it out. I would say between 30 to 40.
Yeah, I was going to say close to 40 by the time you include all the
Yeah.
teams and all the different divisions in the Edmonton area.
Yeah, no, there was a pretty significant jump this past year, and like a lot more representation too, like girls actually getting to play, which is good, and just really being responded to a lot more positively than in the past.
Right, go ahead, continue on. There was just a question about the rules. Corey, who's our Six-a-Side High School representative, who I'm sure you've met maybe at our Football Alberta board meetings or whatever, but Corey wants to maybe chat with you about the different rules that you guys have. So nothing right now.
Perfect. Yeah, the rules are a little all over the place, I must say, when you actually look at all of them as a whole. It's interesting. Okay, well, I'll get into barriers for females in football. So this is something, so this slide kind of talking about the reality. These are comments that I have taken specifically from girls, or comments that I have heard in the past. And I really wanted to showcase these because I think it really shows, how tough the skin of the girls that are currently playing really has to be. I wish I could say that this wasn't consistent and this wasn't happening all the time, but unfortunately it is. So you can imagine if a girl is already on the fence about playing football and she's hearing some of this stuff, she's probably not going to keep playing. So like I said, going back, for every girl that is playing, there is several that would be playing, but with all the barriers and everything going on, they choose not to. Kind of starting with the first one, this is one that especially us women get a lot. If we're going to hurt ourselves, absolutely, but we're passionate about playing and we want the opportunity to play, and this isn't generally something that's going to be asked in the way that it's asked to us, to males. My absolute favorite one, and this one is fairly consistent, is saying that our female bodies can't handle the impact like a man's can. That is not true. There is no research that actually shows that. But it's one that is very interesting. I've actually been told that I wouldn't be able to have children because I've played football. So you want to think that people are fairly receptive to women playing football and pretty positive, but there is this kind of side as well. And I think it's really important to acknowledge it and be aware of it. A lot of stuff with just girls can't play football. You play football like men's football. It's not men's football, it's just football in general. And then a lot of the girls just hear a lot, you're too small to play, you're too pretty to play. I've had refs tell me I need to be quiet and act like a lady in the past. That's come a long way, but it's happened. So just to kind of paint the picture of what we are actually having to deal with on a pretty regular basis, hopefully not for much longer. It gets a little bit better over time. But when you're not in our shoes, sometimes it's very hard to understand, why things like this happen and why sometimes we have the outlook on things that we do. So this screen is just really talking about some of the really big barriers that females are facing in football and with trying to grow programs that we tend to face. So lack of support is a really big one. This goes for female sports in general. It's definitely not just us. With the popular sports, they deal with this enough. So you can only imagine with a sport that we're trying to really create and grow from the bottom, how much we struggle with that sometimes. Societal norms. I would like to think that we are far enough that this still doesn't affect things, but it definitely does. From girls kind of really being taught that they should be delicate and not be aggressive, and that you shouldn't want to play sports, you shouldn't want to get dirty, that kind of thing, and that boys are taught they need to be tough and strong. And this is something that when you get boys and girls on the same teams can be really tough, because sometimes with the boys, they, you know, in the beginning when the girls are playing, they're like, oh, okay, that's fine, like whatever, not really bothered by it. But as soon as they're challenged, generally they don't take it very well. I've been at football camps. Our women's team is lucky enough to be able to go to some of the high school boys football camps, and I've been going to them for a while. And in the beginning, it was fine. You know, they were afraid to hit us, which is normal. That always happens. Then they got a little bit better. They were a lot more receptive, especially the ones that have been coming over the years. And then kind of the last couple that I've been to, you can really see a shift that they're just not able to know how to handle being challenged by a female. And it's not necessarily their fault, but it's something, if you know, you just don't have to be put in that position to even have to manage or deal with that if you just have separate teams and equal opportunities separately. Underestimation, even going back to the previous slide, that's a big theme, is people just think that girls can't play football. Or if girls are playing, you know, they're aware of what they signed up for. You know, it's not a surprise that they're going to get hit. There's no need to take it easy on them. If they signed up to play high school boys football with the boys, they're there, they're in. You know, if they get hit too hard and they decide that maybe it's not for them or that it's just not going to work for them, then that's fine. But if they're there, they're there. Lack of continuity. This is a big thing, and I will say with tackle for females as well as flag. Neither of those sports right now are going to be number one sports for any of our athletes. There needs to be continuous opportunities at all ages and levels for a sport to really have visibility and to see growth and support within there. So when you don't have those segmented steps and those opportunities, you're going to have a really hard time growing something. Obviously, it starts somewhere. So interestingly enough, it actually started more on the adult side. That's where everything kind of come together. And now we're working backwards to try and create those feeder leagues and to try and develop the players to play in those leagues. Big one that I was very surprised by over the last couple of years is just general ignorance and hate. I've heard so many stories from some of my girls, whether it's dealing with people that they go to school with, or sometimes it's even adults, more often than I would hope it is, but it does happen. Just not being supportive and just being downright hateful. And it's really upsetting for me to hear those things because there's not a lot I can do with it or be able to do about it. But you know, I just talk my girls through it. I'm like, you're gonna run into this. This is unfortunately gonna happen. It shouldn't be, but just got to battle through it. And then resources is another big one. Having proper coach and administrators are necessary. This is typically why you'll see that women's and girls seasons will avoid overlap, whether it's competition for fields. Big one is competition for coaches. A lot of the female teams when they started would use some of the men's or boys teams equipment. So hence why they don't run a parallel season with the boys teams. Through all of this, there's definitely, like, this is something that you could talk about all day with the things that go on. One thing that I really try and preach and talk to, whether it's people I coach with, females that I coach with, or girls that I'm coaching or being exposed to, is it's all going to happen and it's going to be there. You just take it with a grain of salt and try and move forward and prove them wrong. It's unfortunate that a lot of the things that happen, but we can only control what we control. So just moving forward and doing what they absolutely can. So kind of going from a pretty negative part of this into something that's quite a bit more positive. So we're going to kind of talk about just milestones in female football. Again, if you don't follow female football, you're not really aware of a lot of the things that are going on. So we'll just kind of buzz through those. Biggest thing for all of this was having all girls leagues started. With youth development leagues growing, without youth development leagues growing, the sport becomes stunted and difficult to progress. That was one of my driving factors behind starting a girls tackle league here, was we just weren't getting the numbers and the quality of players for the Edmonton Storm, the WWCFL team I play on, for us to really be successful. Saskatchewan is in a fantastic place. They have two amazing teams. They get a lot of ex-collegiate athletes. They really have quality people over there. And we we're doing good. We're getting, a lot further. We're a lot better than we used to be, and it's growing. But one of the biggest things was recognizing that we need girls to be coming up that are developed and have played before and aren't playing football for the first time. A big announcement that was made last week was the NAIA, Intercollegiate Sport Association. They are actually being funded by NFL Flag and the NFL to start a women's flag, I guess not league, but as a sport, as a university sport. So it'll be the first post-secondary opportunity for females to play football. Even though it's flag, you got to start somewhere, and those two things work very much side by side. I think this is a huge move, and it's going to change a lot of things up. This is a very realistic thing for some of our girls that are playing right now, whether it be tackle or whether it be flag, that they can actually go to university and play flag football as a sport. So it's pretty huge. Big thing too, presence and recognition in NFL and CFL. I will say definitely a lot more on the NFL side. The representation and support matters. If girls aren't seeing females in football, they can't beat females in football. You're going to have some girls that are trailblazers that just want to do stuff, but most of them, if they're not seeing someone like them, they're not going to go after that. One really big thing that the NFL has done, they've stood behind the WNFC, one of the newer women's leagues in the States, done quite a bit of promotion through them, having females working and interning in the NFL, as well as the Utah Girls League that I previously mentioned. They actually got to play a halftime, little mini halftime game at the previous or just recent Pro Bowl. So that was really huge. And I'm actually going to show you a little clip from there because it's really interesting to see. So I'll just pull that up.
The state of Utah was on display with 2 all-girls tackle football all-star teams representing 17 high schools from Utah. They actually drew some loud cheers from the crowd when Sam Gordon right there came up the sideline, reached for the goal line for 6, then the double reverse. Tila Malungahu takes it in for a score. Gordon says she hopes this shows the rest of the nation that they can play at the high school level too.
I hope that us going out there and playing well, proves that girls love football too, and we want the opportunity to play in high schools. And I hope we can show that girls are good at football. And there's definitely a lot more work to be done, but the NFL allowing us to come play during the Pro Bowl and things like that, that's that type of stuff we need to help us move forward.
So that was a really big step forward in female football, was getting that type of exposure. I mean, if you saw it, the stadium's full. I actually talked to one of the coaches that was down there for the game, who's coaching the game, and he said it was just amazing. The amount of support, the amount of players they had coming up and high-fiving them and wanting to talk to them about it was really prominent, and I think that just puts it in a very positive light. Girls Canada Cup, which was actually supposed to happen this year, would have been the U19 Girls Tackle Canada Cup. We would have had, I think, 4 or 5 provinces, basically like women's nationals, but for the girls. It would have been the first elite program opportunity for girls playing football other than the flag football opportunities. This is something that going forward we are going to continue to put on. Unfortunately, we were stifled this year by COVID-19, but it will be back. The Adidas sponsorship, this would have been the first women's football team league that was ever sponsored by a major sports brand. So when the WNFC incepted, when they started, one of their first big sponsor announcements was Adidas. And this was really, really big in the football world. The women's football world, because that isn't something that any of the leagues in the States had ever been able to get. And then the last big thing is IFAF recognition. So the fact that there is actually a Team Canada for women's football is super, super huge. Again, we're kind of working backwards, but that's fine because, it's a lot easier to, for a girl to dream when she can play football at the national and world level. There's a lot more opportunity in that way. So it's fantastic. And then just a couple of notable females. Some of them you might have heard their name before. So Katie Sowers was pretty prominent in the news around NFL this year. So she's an offensive assistant coach for the San Francisco 49ers. She worked there a little bit as a seasonal offensive assistant. She was with the Atlanta Falcons to start with. She's also a IFAF gold medalist with Team USA in 2013. She played in one of the women's leagues for quite a long time. And I believe her and her twin sister actually grew up playing football in minor football as well. Her sister Liz actually just got named to one of the NAIA universities for girls flag football as the head coach. Callie Bronson, I have played against her. I have played with her in some camps. She is a fantastic human being. She's very much American. She's very loud and proud when it comes to football. She's done some scouting intern with the Jets. She's currently the chief of staff of the Cleveland Browns. This was a huge news. I'm so excited for her and see how that works out for her. Two-time IFAF gold medalist. She's actually a two-time WFA champion as well, and had a nice long career with the DC Divas. And then Phoebe Schechter, she's currently sits on the chair. She's the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at BAFA. There's only supposed to be one F there. That's the British, Europe football organization. She's done lots of coaching internships in the NFL, a lot in some NCAA opportunities. She's also the Great Britain national team captain in 2017. And another big thing that she's working on is she's runs a social media thing called the UK Dukes, and she's really focusing on football growing in Europe. She works with another guy out there, and they've done a really good job at really promoting and moving football forward in Europe. I'm going to stop there for a quick second. If there's any questions, basically we're going to get into all the nitty-gritty of actually growing and creating opportunities for girls now. So if there's any questions in regards to kind of the history or the past or the current opportunities with girls football, ask them now. Okay, guess we're good. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about growing the game. So there's a couple different directions you can go when growing a girls program from what I've seen with the programs that exist right now. So one of the things that I think works probably the best is building on existing minor football leagues, clubs, and programs. So that's very much like what we did in CDMFA. We just asked clubs that were currently running if they wanted to field a girls team, yes or no. Some of them committed, and that's really where we built everything off of. We already had all the infrastructure. We already had everything that we need to make it happen. So it was really simple and straightforward to put forward. The Pacific Girls Football League or Prairie Girls Football League in Saskatchewan very much runs, I believe, the same way. You can also choose to utilize a high school structure. So some of the areas that don't have a lot of minor football or just kind of want to handle it a different way, Utah is kind of bouncing around with that idea, as well as the East Coast League. So they run very much with the high schools. You can utilize a combination. So Manitoba Girls Football League, they run their own, they run off of already current clubs, but they actually have their own organization. So they're the Manitoba Girls Football League versus us at the CDMFA. We run everything through CDMFA. There is no separate league. For them, it's worked really great. Whether it's a necessity or not, I don't really think it is. And then, of course, it's running, completely your own league and organizations and operations. I think that's something that we're very far away from being able to do. And whether or not we really need to or want to do that, I think it's great to combine both boys and girls and run them side by side. It makes things way easier, and you really get to pool your resources. Big thing with growing the game is promotion. So this is very much a non-negotiable. You're not going to have a lot of girls looking for the opportunity to play football. So you very much have to get out in the community and on social media and really promote. You cannot over promote it. Awareness is going to be the key to success. Recruitment, a lot of time and effort will have to go into recruitment to get something off the ground. I know that's something where some of our clubs struggled a little bit that had wanted to field teams, and with numbers is that they thought people were just going to show up at the door. That's not going to be the case. You need to get out in the community. St. Albert was fantastic. They would get into their schools. They would talk to the girls in the schools. That's how they really built their very large and successful girls program out there. You have to get in the community. They're not just going to show up at your doorstep and say, I want to play football. Some will, but you need to do a lot of work. But one thing I will say, and this happens with any sport, and I think anything that you do, but I think it's exceptionally strong in the girls football world, is once you do have that core group, going forward, they're going to do most of the work for you. So if you're starting something up, if you give them a good experience and you give them the opportunity to play, they're going to go out and promote everything for you. You're not going to have to work super hard on that. For example, our Raiders team last year, I call them, they're like an amoeba. They would just go out into the community and find their friends, and they would just engulf all these people into their little core football group. And they came back with like twice as many as there was. They were the smallest team. They had 8 players, and they're one of the bigger organizations on the girls' side this year. So you give it to them in the first little bit, and they're going to do a lot of that promotion in the future for you. Also, finding the right people. You want to surround the program with the people that believe in it. One bad apple can really have an effect, and we'll kind of talk about what a bad apple would be considered. You want to have people that are dedicated and committed and have, buy-in to what you're trying to do. You can't just get anyone to do it.
You're talking about recruiting there, Tanya, and just to interrupt you.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for coaches who want to talk to parents and recruit their girls to play with the boys in minor football?
If they want to play with the boys?
Yeah. So maybe younger programs that don't have an all-girls program, but want to recruit them to play with the boys.
I think, again, kind of the stuff that I went over is like there's a lot of opportunity, and just a lot of people aren't aware of it. So, I mean, if you're a parent and you're choosing between, maybe in a season soccer and football, and soccer, there's an obnoxious amount of opportunity with soccer, so everyone knows about it. They're more likely going to put their kid in a sport that shows that continuity and those opportunities down the road. So having that knowledge to be able to explain, well, she can play now, but then these are going to be our opportunities in the future as well. That's going to help a lot. And just, again, having the right people, even in your organization, when you are just dealing, when you do have a mixed team or primarily a boys team, the girls have to have a coach that's going to support them and, watch out for them, because you're going to have to kind of oversee what's happening, especially when you get into the older age groups, because the boys can get a little out of place sometimes. And, if you don't manage it and deal with that, that can be a little bit of a struggle. So, surrounding yourself with the right people, having a good, solid program, and being able to really coach them on what those kids could be exposed to down the road and what the benefits of playing football are, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing.
And on that same topic, what advice do you have trying to recruit girls and or women from different sport backgrounds? Like you had said, you played competitive basketball in high school. And what advice do you have trying to recruit girls who are maybe good athletes, but maybe are playing other sports or just stop playing other sports?
So from a women's side, I find this is actually super easy because there's very few sports that you can play. You can play at the competitive level that I would say the WWCFL and Team Alberta, Team Canada, short of being a university sports athlete and playing in university. I mean, yes, some go on to play in, basketball, volleyball, whatever, professionally. But there's very few things, like if you're still, working, but you want to play a sport and you want to take it seriously and it's not just a recreational sport, that you can play other than football. And when it comes to girls, I think it's very much the same thing. It's different. We have a lot of rugby girls, and when you get to that kind of top, let's say grade 12, where they're making the decision of what sport they want to go with, I say, well, what are your goals? And if one of their goals is they want to play on an international stage, depending where they're at and whatever sport they play, they might have more opportunity in football and just different opportunities. So just making them aware of stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, cool. You're good to go. Thanks.
Perfect. So one thing I want to touch on is how female football will help existing football programs, because I think this is really important to talk about. So, if maybe you're part of an organization that's kind of been thinking about it, but you're on the fence, or a lot of people have this kind of idea that it's going to be competing essentially, which I very much disagree with. I think it very much helps grow traditional football as well. So increased exposure. Current clubs and programs and organizations will be seen by more eyes. So for example, in the CDMFA, the teams that had girls teams, I know had mentioned this year that they had seen a lot more interest in kids coming out and playing for their organizations because they were in the spotlight. You know, the girls were on the news all year last year, again already this year quite a bit. So, you know, if a kid's choosing between, you know, two different clubs they can play for, the one that they've seen and heard the most about is generally where they're going to go. So, you know, for example, if you had a club that didn't have a girls program versus a club that had a girls program, you're going to be probably quite a bit more successful down the road. Increased volunteer pool. We can always use more volunteers. I did not actually change the stock writing that was under that. So increased volunteer pool. Increase in membership. So you're just getting more people. Again, didn't change on that one either. You're getting more people in your club. You know, you might have a sister, or you might have a girl that plays football that her brother doesn't play football, but all of a sudden maybe he's interested in football. So you just get more people coming in that funnel. And the more you can widen that funnel and the more people you can welcome into your community, the more successful you're going to be and the more opportunities you're going to be able to produce. As well as an increased fan base. So even going from just like minor and high school, you know, more people watching football, but when you even look up to like an NFL and CFL level, you know, if you have more girls playing football, if you have, you know, double the amount of people playing football, you can essentially double your fan base. I know the NFL has seen quite a big jump because of this and all of the stuff that they have been doing to promote women in football. You have a lot more women really tuning in and paying attention. So I'm just going to quickly walk you through what our inaugural 2019 season looked like with CDMFA. So I wasn't actually part of the CDMFA. I wasn't working for them. This all started because I got back from Flag Nationals and I wanted girls football to be better. So I went to Taylor and I said, I want to start a girls tackle league. What do I do? He told me to go talk to CDMFA. So I went and talked to CDMFA and I said, I want to start a girls league. And Daryl was like, I'm into that. So I went and talked to the board and members at their meeting in November. And by December, we had moved forward with it and decided it was something we were going to do. This was a very quick process. This was like super last minute, but it all still worked out. Early March, we started combined team practices, both with and without equipment. This was really huge from a recruitment and piquing interest standpoint. It was a lot better to get a larger group of girls together than it was to get like, you know, 3 or 4 for each team. There's just not a lot of excitement around that. By March, individual team practices had started, and then we ran our first season through April and May. They had 1 preseason game, 3 regular season, and 2 playoff games, and then we had a tier 1 and 2 championships. So that year we played midget age, so kind of basically high school versus boys. We actually did allow grade 12 girls as well. We had 4 different clubs, 4 different teams, and we had about 46 players registered. Gameplay that year, we ran 6-a-side. We ran jamboree style, so just half field going into the end zones. We ran no special teams. Turnovers were not returnable. And then we ran 30-minute runtime halves. So things, you know, they got a good amount of playing. They got through it pretty quickly, and we kept it fairly simple. We did not have a lot of girls that had played before. A lot more of them were beginners, had a lot of flag girls, but everyone was pretty new. I remember the first game we coached, every girl cried when they first got hit, and then they were like, oh, I'm fine, and then everything was fine. Another really interesting thing was actually how few injuries we had. Other than some like ones that like with a torn ankle ligament, but other than that, girls were really, you know, they didn't come off and take a bunch of plays off because they were sore or something hurt. They wanted to be out on that field. So this was our first equipment camp, our first and only equipment camp we ran. This was all the teams at the time together. There was obviously a couple girls missing, and then we still picked up more girls after. But yeah, we had 18 girls in equipment, and I remember being so excited. There was 18 girls in equipment. It was the most exciting thing ever. And when we go through 2020, you'll see how that very quickly changed. We had St. Albert, so this was kind of this is our last game, this is our championship weekend. St. Albert had really, really great numbers. We had Leduc, also really great numbers. We actually had LeDuc. We had Kiki Simmons, who was actually a ex-Edmonton Storm player who played Team Canada as well, and Sherry, who was also ex-Edmonton Storm, and her son, which is pretty awesome. And then we had Wetaskiwin, again, nice, really big program. And then we had the Raiders. There was 8 of them. One other girl that wasn't in this picture, but very, very small team. We actually took home the Tier 1 championships. Wetaskiwin, the previous team, took home Tier 2. So that was 2018. Fast forward to 2020. Obviously, this season didn't happen, but I will talk about what it would have been had it happened. So the 2020 season, we had 2 different age divisions, so we split it off into junior and senior. Originally, we called it U19 and U16, but it just gets confusing that way, so junior, senior is much easier. 6 different clubs, so we actually had 2 new clubs step up and form teams, one of them being Fort McKay, way up north. They had previously ran a 9-a-side bantam team and had a significant amount of girls, so they stepped into the ring, which is fantastic. 9 different teams total across both divisions, and by the time we had to close everything off, we had 120 and change players registered. So we were close to almost increasing by 3 times, which is pretty significant. And I would definitely say I started with CDMFA in January. Promotion-wise, we did some, but not as much as I would have liked to. So having those numbers with how little promotion we actually did was absolutely fantastic. December, we opened registration. Depending on the club, they opened as well. Some of them waited a little bit. I was doing at the time a lot of recruiting through the YAG Female Football Collective and just really piquing interest. February, March, we ran combined team practices, both with and without equipment. And then late March would have been scrimmage and jamboree. April and May would have been regular season games, playoffs, and championships. Gameplay for the plan this year. For juniors, we would have played very similar to our first year, 6-a-side jamboree style, no special teams. We did vote to change the turnover rule, so turnovers were returnable. And 30-minute runtime halves, we kept that the same. The nice thing with this is with 6-a-side, obviously you have less people in a field. So the reason we chose to go with that in the first place, even in 2019, was just to have more people in one space. There's a lot more excitement around when there's more people. When you have those people, there's just not quite the same atmosphere. And atmosphere was something that was really, really important. Gameplay for the seniors, we were gonna run full field, 6-a-side, full special teams, 10-minute quarters. Basically the textbook 6-man rules, except for we were not going to change the size of the field. We were just going to, or the length of the field, we were just going to play with it as is, just change the width. So this was our first non-equipment practice. As you can see, there's quite a few more girls. It's actually really cool to see the photos side by side in the same exact place. We had to stand a lot further back with the camera. And then our first tackle practice, or second tackle practice maybe, I think we were sitting at about 80 girls at these. So there was one whole team that wasn't coming to these practices, and there was still a lot of recruiting that was happening and just people that weren't able to make it out. So our last practice, we actually play, we did, I can't think of the name of it, but whatever that drill is. We did that. The girls were super amped. I'm really, really glad we did that for our last practice because it was we didn't know it was going to be the end, but it was a really good way to go out, very positive way. Next thing is kind of language and communication. This, I think, is a really big thing with growth. It kind of touches back to some of the barriers. It very much intersects with that. So here, I kind of just took, there's this slide and the next slide, and it's things that I've heard a lot and girls have heard a lot, and things that really we need to work on as a whole to change the narrative on. So in the white on the top, you're a really talented football player for a girl. This is something that is said all the time. You're really strong for a girl, you're good for a girl, you're this for a girl, you're that for a girl. We just need to stop that, and we just need to change it to you're a really talented football player. It seems like a harmless saying, but it's basically saying, okay, well, you're good for a girl, but you're still not good because a boy is good. just say they're a good player. And it's something that sometimes comes out of people's mouths without even thinking. But it's just something that I like to point out awareness to, just to really work on changing how you talk about things. Another big one is the girls are hitting harder than you. So Emma is really up in the competition. Let's go. That's going to be a much better way to say and kind of get across the thing. You just don't want to be comparing the boys and the girls, like saying like, oh, Jonathan, like Cameron's really beating you up. Like there's a lot of messy feelings and emotions in there. So, there's no need to compare them. Just treat everyone the same. We don't need to pin them against each other. So kind of some other considerations when it comes to language. Awareness of your language, like I kind of mentioned. If you choose to talk like this, you are honestly part of the problem. It's something that there's been a lot more awareness brought to in recent years, and it's just really not an acceptable thing to say anymore. Don't pin or hype up the girls versus boys situation. Just treat them all like the exact same players. Girls just want to be treated the same. So if they come and ask you a question, or they come and ask you like, what can I do to improve? You should be answering that the exact same way as you would if it was a male player coming and asking you that question. So that's just kind of something, if you are coaching girls and working with girls, like before you answer, kind of run in your head, like, am I trying to answer this different than I would if I was answering it to a male player? Again, something that you're not always aware of, but that's why I like to bring the awareness to it so that you can really pay attention to how you're talking about certain things. A really big one, if you're dealing with girls on boys teams, and it's not being managed very well right now, I would say. It's managing inappropriate behavior and comments made by males on the team and at any other time and location. If you're behind girls football, you really need to be the biggest advocates of those girls. That doesn't mean special treatment. That doesn't mean anything like that. But if you see that boys are giving a girl a hard time on a team, you need to point it out. Because if you don't point it out and if you don't deal with it, then you are now becoming part of the problem. So a really great example of this is one of the girls that played high school football this year. One of the other players in her position was giving her a really hard time, saying, you shouldn't be playing football. You can't play football. You're a girl. You don't deserve to be here. And she had a lot of really good friends on that team, and she was very lucky to have a bunch of boys that actually stood up for her and said, listen, man, like, that's not okay. You can't talk like that. She has every right to play football, and she can play football. So that was a story that kind of has a really good positive and a negative to it. To actually have boys standing up for the girl on their team was a really, really huge thing. But that's exactly it. Like, you have to manage that behavior and make sure it's not happening. Like, that's not something, behaving that way towards girls and women in general as a young male is something that shouldn't be being taught or being allowed to happen. That's something that needs to be changed and dealt with. It just will make having boys and girls on your team much, much smoother. Girls, like I said, they're not asking for special treatment. There's not a girl coming into a team that's asking to be put up on this pedestal and be treated differently. They just want to be treated the same as everyone else. When I play, when people would, when I go to the camps where there's lots of boys, if I'm like accidentally called a boy, I'm not even bothered by it, because I'm like, they're just looking at everyone the same. Pity actions and publicity stunts. There is definitely in the media a lot of certain, and I won't go into depth about them, but there's a lot of things that have happened and players in certain positions that have very much been publicity stunts, just to draw attention. And I really, if you have followed a lot of that media, you'll see that there's certain things that I have left out of this conversation because I don't believe they've moved anything forward. And not doing any pity actions, like not giving someone an award just because they're the only girl on the team. Like, if she played well and she was the best girl on the team, give her that award, but just don't do that. And I've seen it happen a couple times, and I just think it's really something, you're not doing anyone any favors by doing that. I'm quickly going to buzz through this, and then we can get to some questions. So social media, I work a lot on this because it has been instrumental to growing and recruiting for football, both on the girls and the women's side. It's very, very important. So the next two things, I'm just going to show you two short videos. These are things that I just threw together for girls football recruitment. They're very easy to put together, very successful. And they worked very, very well. So this is the first one. So this was just a little recruitment video that I put together, just to really draw attention to opportunity, just to kind of get it out. I do not know how to pause that. Get it out in the community so people could really see it. Things get shared, they get seen a lot, so it's fantastic. This video, I'll let you watch. So again, things like that, they go a long way when it comes to recruitment and promoting. You know, you're really going to draw attention of girls. I mean, that's not something that's super prominent in a lot of sport recruitment, is at that age of seeing stuff like that. But that's something that I just saw is really important to just really get the word out there and the awareness. So kind of on the topic of social media, it bridges into the YG Female Football Collective. This is just something I started because there just wasn't enough coverage, nor could I control getting more coverage when it came to girls and women's football. So I just really created a hub for female football that provides supports, helps with recruitment, media coverage, and information. It's not a league, it's not a team, it's not anything like that. It's just, and one day I'll be registered as not-for-profit, but it's just an opportunity for me to be able to give back to the community and kind of create a brand to support women's football and girls football, as well as kind of a different way to communicate to everyone. So if you can get everyone in one place, that means if you communicate, you know, a certain event, you're gonna be able to get people out there because you have all these like-minded people together. I have lots of hopes and dreams for moving this forward and lots of really cool stuff that I have planned with it. But its big thing is just its support and visibility and really being able to put things out there. So goal-wise, these three things are what I kind of see as like, this is what I'm going for over the next 5 to 10 years, what I would like to see, with or without whoever is helping me. But so more established girls tackle teams and leagues. Southern Alberta, again, there's nothing going on down there. And I know I've talked to a couple people that have been interested. So if you're one of those people, feel free to reach out. I think football is something that can do really well, especially playing six-a-side in those small town communities. I mean, I'm one of those people that came from a small town, and I would have been so happy if that was an opportunity. And even with our CDMFA league, a lot of those smaller towns and out of the city communities are the ones that are super successful with their numbers. Like Wetaskiwin, no problem recruiting. St. Albert, they've done really great. Edmonton, I mean, the first year we had 1 and we had 9 girls play. So if all of Edmonton, you know, we're struggling to pull players a little bit more due to just more access to sports for them than small towns. But I think that's something that's could be really looked at. And then maybe one day we have some university teams, and then we have WWCFL, whether that's modeled more like a junior team or that's modeled as just that next step after playing collegiate. That would be fantastic. Really building enough opportunities to be able to create it to become a primary sport. So I talked a little bit about that already. To be able to be a primary sport, there needs to be consistent opportunities and continuity, and awareness falls in behind that. So that's why I really, really push all of that, because we need football and flag football too to be a #1 sport. You know, we want kids to play a lot of sports, but there's always that one sport that they know, like, you know, that's kind of my jam. And one of the sports we compete a lot with is rugby. So if we can kind of just be a little bit more dominant, that will help us really grow the sport. Seeing more coaches, so female coaches at a junior, post-secondary, and professional level. When we have that ability to have a playing career, that opens up the door to become coaches down the road. If you know, any of the coaches that have worked in the NFL or done internships in the NFL that are females have, for the most part, actually all of them have played tackle football. You know, none of them were like, you know, green and had no idea what's going on. They all played. And most of them played for a long time, and most of them played at the highest level they could play at. So that's always something that we hear a lot, is that females can't know football because they don't play, but most of the time it's because people don't know we can play and that we do play. So I think that's a really big marker of success. I'll kind of take a pause there for a second. If there's any questions about any of that stuff. Okay, I have 2 more slides after this. So this one and one more. Really will kind of wrap everything up. If there's anything that you're thinking of right now, ask it, and then we can get to that at the end. Keys to success. So I kind of just broke it down into 4 different things that I think are really, really important for wanting to grow, whether that's girls playing with the boys or growing a girls league in general. Community. Girls by nature are going to be just a little bit more bonded than males typically do. I know I was really impressed with how close the girls on the teams were. It's just different than it would be on a boys team. And that's where, you know, it makes it a little bit harder when you have mixed teams to really create the same type of community. Both boys and girls kind of feel, you know, it's just not the same. Community is everything. That's what helps you grow. That's what helps you recruit. That's what helps you move forward. Quality. I don't believe in just throwing something against the wall and hoping it sticks. I think you have to be aware of the quality you're putting out there. You know, don't just do something to do something. Have a plan, have plans for when those plans don't work, and just be ready for anything to pop up. Communication, that comes with, you know, social media, that comes with, you know, media, and just even, you know, if you're starting something or have something going on, you know, just communicating with people. This really goes for everything, not just girls football. But if you don't communicate, you know, people tend to react poorly to that. They think something weird's going on. And when you're starting something new, it's really hard to move forward with something if you're not putting out those details, because they'll want to just go somewhere where the details are available. And then exposure. You know, people being aware of the opportunities. Girls playing with the boys, again, that's another big one for exposure. You know, getting boys to see that girls can actually play football and have them as their fans and have them as their supporters as well. Players, coaches alike. Major takeaways. So these are just kind of 4 things that I put together to just kind of tie everything up. First one, female football isn't a fad. It's been around for a very, very long time. In Canada, not as long, but in the States, women have been playing tackle football since I think the 40s. Female football is here to stay. It will develop with or without you. It's something that, you know, if you want to be part of something and grow, and, you know, create, it's been really powerful to be able to, you know, give girls opportunities that they never thought they had. It's just different. And I know a lot of the coaches and a lot of the people that, you know, even parents of kids that I've talked to, they're very surprised and very taken aback by the talent and the legitimacy of it. I know I had one dad whose daughter plays primarily flag and convinced him to bring his daughter out. He was kind of on the fence about it. But at the end of the practice, he was so amped up because he had no idea. He's like, there are so many girls out there. There's so much talent. This is so exciting. This is so awesome. Sign us up right now. So it just really shows that power of having those combined practices and bringing everyone together. But, you know, when people see it, they're going to want to be involved in it. Going back to language and support, you make a huge impact just by being aware of how you talk and what you talk about. So all that stuff we really discussed, and I mentioned, those are really important things. They're little things that we don't think about, but those are the things that often are going to make the biggest impact. I mean, you know, if you have a girl who has interest in playing football in high school and her coach just shoots her down and says football's not for girls, just, you know, that's going to affect her for a while. You know, that's something that could affect her for a very long time. And it can make her hesitant with moving forward with things and trying new things. Awareness is everything. Girls knowing football is an option is one of the biggest hurdles. So if you know someone who's interested, make sure they know. Talk about it often. You know, you never know who's listening. You never know who you're around. You never know who could be interested. And then growth of programs. So really, helping grow programs, whether that's coaching, whether that's, being that biggest fan and like, supporting, any negative talk about girls and really, kind of shutting it down and trying to spin that into a positive and just, standing up for, what is a very small community right now, trying to move forward. So I'm going to open it up if you have any questions.
Sure. Tanya, do you have your chat open there? You know how to open it and kind of maybe move it to the side of your screen? You can monitor it. But while you're doing that, just want to obviously say thank you very much. Tanya, you know that I'm a believer in you and a supporter of you. So I was pumped to have you do this. I've probably told you this story and you've heard me say it, but I've been working with Football Alberta for, I think, 4 years now. But the number one like memory and pure joy I have is when we started the girls high school flag football league and the first touchdown that was scored and just the pure joy. Like I've played, coached, been part of football and all sports for a long time, but just the pure joy that the girls had when they scored like their first touchdown. They caught a 5-yard pass. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but when they first caught their first pass, like it was such a cool moment for them. And I think it's by far my number one memory of being employed with Football Alberta. It's just that first touchdown and just the pure joy. So as a father of a daughter, I'm definitely a supporter of football, and I'd love to see my girl play one day. So thank you. And I'm not sure if you can read that chat there. I haven't read it yet. But
Yes, I can. Amy reminded me it was Oklahoma I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah, like kind of like Taylor said, it's very different. It's really interesting. Like this is something that girls have been told for a very long time that's not for them. And when they fight so much to get the opportunity to play, when something positive happens, they score their first touchdown, they catch their first ball, they win their first championship. It's not joy like any other sport. Like it's just different. I played every sport growing up, and playing football as a female has been one of the most life-changing things that could have ever happened to me. And, when I'm having 15, 16-year-old girls say that football has changed their life, I think that's very powerful. There's being involved with it is absolutely outstanding. Like I coach boys football and it's awesome and I like it. It's not the same. Boys very much, they have the opportunity to play or not play. It's, no one ever is questioning like, oh, well, maybe like, do I have the opportunity to play football? No, it's just in nature. It's just, they either do or they don't. But for girls, it's a lot different. They don't think they have that opportunity. So when it is given to them, it's fantastic.
And one thing that stuck with me with your presentation that I would absolutely echo would be once you get a group of 5, 6, 8, 10 girls, it's like, I don't want to say a cult, but it just like they just start gathering and getting more players and more interest. They're best friends. They're inseparable. It's a really cool dynamic to see. So there's a question there about the PGFL.
Yes.
What is that?
6 or 9. I don't remember what I said they played. I don't know if they play 12 side or 9. They're really new, so it's their second year. It's Saskatchewan, so I'm not really sure what they're doing over there, because but I know like they tried to start a little bit more of a girls' presence up in Saskatoon last year. They didn't quite have the interest, so they actually had one team they put together to play against a lower age group of boys. So, especially over there where everything's a little bit more spread out and they don't have the population, that's probably something they could look at.
Yeah, I did. So I did record this and we'll post it on our Google Drive and share it with all the participants. And we'll happily share this with other organizations within Alberta or across Canada. If you're willing or interested in starting up a team or a league in your area, even if it's small with 4 teams or inter squad with just a group of 20 women or girls, reach out to Tanya for sure. Cam, who's been a big follower of this series and been in most of the presentations, excited for the growth of the sport, so that's good to hear. Justin asked about, you said rugby is one of the biggest competitors for female football. Southern Alberta has a big rugby community, so we can get football growing down here when the seasons run at the same time during the spring. Yeah, it might be something depending on your resources, Justin, if you can do something in the fall, but you got to, like Tanya said, you got to find coaches and field space. I'm sure you can find field space somewhere, but it's those coaches and those administrators to see when's a good time to do it, whether it's summertime or fall, for sure.
Yeah, rugby's tough, and I know that's a little bit of a ongoing, I guess you can kind of call it a battle. I think it's a battle. I think football is better than rugby. But I think it's just, again, if if you just kind of go by what is common knowledge, people automatically think there's more opportunity in rugby. And I mean, right now, the big thing is if you have an elite player and they're going to get a scholarship to go play rugby, that's what they got to do. But that's where, having something like the Female Football Collective in that conversation is that they know that when they're done rugby, unless they're going off and playing Team Canada, they can come and play football after. I mean, until we have something at the university level for football, that's going to be a very common theme. But I mean, from this, sports development standpoint, it can be incredibly beneficial for them to play both. And we have had girls, and we have lots of girls up here that actually do play both at the same time.
If anybody has a question and wants to just pop their video on and talk directly to Tanya, you can. If I'm not hearing any more, we will wrap it up soon. But once again, thank you, Tanya. And if there's anybody who wants to reach out, feel free to call her, text her, email her. She's pretty accessible. And if you don't follow some of her social media, she's very good at the old social media. And that is incredibly important with the youth of our day. And some of the promotion that she does for those young girls, I think, is huge for them and huge for the sport. So follow some of her channels that she has there. With that being said, we will wrap it up there. Thursday is going to be the development of a minor football program from grassroots to provincial championships. So it's going to be Coach Greg Wilson with the Calgary Wildcats, as I hesitate there. And he's going to be talking about his experience growing football all the way from the Adam level through to the provincial level. So please tune in. It's going to be 7 o'clock. If you're not already registered, please do. Just want to check, make sure I have that right. Yeah, Calgary Wildcats this Thursday, May 14th with Coach Greg Wilson. So we'll leave it there. And Tanya, thank you very much. We will, if you could PDF that document, send it over to me. We will share it with everybody. I know a lot of people like to watch after as well. So thank you and
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Good night.